Good evening, councillors and our visitors tonight. This is a meeting of the Economic Prosperity and Performance Overview Panel, a special meeting, the call-in on the Queen Elizabeth Fields Challenge, the proposals to enter into a deed of dedication for the land at Daniel Park, Whitchurch.
Thank you, Chairman. Let me first be absolutely clear. I want to see a QE2 field in Whitchurch. It is a shame that the decision to allow one has been called in. If it hadn't have been called in, the council would have proceeded to dedicate the land. I very much hope that the committee this evening will resolve to allow the existing decision to stand. Now let me turn to the facts of this matter. As you're all aware, this call-in concerns questions relating to council-owned land on the eastern edge of Whitchurch, namely Daniel Park, an area of open space east of Alliston Way, and an adjoining area of council-owned land to the southeast of the park, known as the Knowlings Field. This is clearly identified as the shaded area on page 28 of 52 in the committee papers. We're here to consider the call-in, not the principle, having already been agreed by committee and cabinet, of the council's proposal to enter into a non-charitable deed of dedication with the Fields-In-Trust organisation. As you know, the entering into the deed is part of the QE2 Fields Challenge, whereby sites identified from a public vote would be dedicated as playing fields in perpetuity and subject to the terms of the deed of dedication. The call-in specifically relates to a recommendation contained within the Cabinet report of 20th March, whereby officers recommended that a strip of land on the south side of and forming part of Daniel Park be excluded from the deed of dedication, again shown page 28. The land to be excluded would be in order to retain the flexibility for potential future access to the council's retained land, that being the Knowlings Field. This committee at its meeting of 6th March resolved, as you're well aware, to recommend to Cabinet that no access land should be excluded from the deed and that all the land forming Daniel Park should be so dedicated. Nonetheless, Cabinet's decision on 20th March, based on officers' recommendation, having listened to the views of residents, was that access land should be excluded from the deed. It's important that the council's retained land is not prejudiced. The council currently has no other council-owned land apart from the strip shaded on page 28 that could provide a suitable access route to the Knowlings Field. This does not mean that the land will be used. Indeed, it may never be needed. But to rule out that possibility now would be wrong. While the Knowlings Field may have potential for future housing development, I can inform the committee that to date no detailed work has been carried out by officers in the property services team, and it would actually be my view that neighbourhood planning, as provided by the government, should be used as far as possible to allow local people to have their say on how their town or parish evolves. In line with that view, to use the Fields-In-Trust process and to call in the decision that would have enabled the dedication of the land ahead of the Diamond Jubilee is, to my mind, the wrong way to determine future planning policy for Whitchurch. As I said earlier, Cabinet has accepted the principle of entering into the deed. Indeed, I actively want to see this happen as quickly as possible. It is the extent of council land to be included in the deed of dedication which forms the subject of this call-in. A call-in was accepted in respect of this decision on two specific grounds only, which is on page 10 of 52, copied on my sheet, but I shan't read out tonight. That is the remit for the committee this evening. So once again, let me say I want to see a QE2 field in Whitchurch. I want to see the land proposed on page 28 dedicated as soon as possible. And it is, in my view, wrong to use the Fields-In-Trust process to circumvent proper planning policy. For these reasons, I very much hope that the committee this evening will resolve to support the hitherto called-in decision and allow the dedication, as previously proposed, to take place. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. That was well within the time. We are not taking questions on this. We'll now ask the signatures of the call-in. Could they appoint the spokesperson? Is that going to be Councillor Day? If you'd like to do your 5 minutes, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In July 2010, the Community Wellbeing Oscom was informed of the Queen Elizabeth II Fields Challenge, which aimed to create a permanent legacy of two major events occurring in 2012, this being the Queen's Diamond Jubilee and the 2012 Olympics. local authorities across the country were being asked to nominate a number of fields in the area they would be happy to project as a Queen Elizabeth II field, which could then be put into public vote in 2011. On the 1st of December 2010, the head of services wrote to all members inviting them to propose sites for inclusion in the list of nominations. The same head of services wrote again into all members on the 4th of February 2011, listing the sites that were to be nominated, one of which was Daniel Park in Whitchurch. The ballot to choose which sites should be dedicated as a QE2 field took place online between the 18th of October and the 19th of November 2011. Daniel Park received many more votes than any other site in Basingstoke and Deane. In fact, it was 330 votes that they got for that particular one. The key point here is a report to the committee on the 6th of March 2012 recommends as follows, that the portfolio holder approves the council entering into a deed of dedication with the Field-In-Trust to enable the designation of Daniel Park as Queen Elizabeth II field on the basis of a non-charitable deed. Point 2 was that the appropriate strip of land be excluded from the deed to attain the option of access to the council retained land, the Knowling Field. The committee agreed to amend the recommendation to read as follows: advise the portfolio holder that the council should enter into a deed of dedication with the FiT Field-In-Trust to enable the designation of Daniel Park as it defined at the time of the Fields in Trust ballot as a Queen Elizabeth field on the basis of a non-charitable deed. On the 20th of March, the Cabinet accepted the original recommendation, rejecting the amendment agreed by this Overview and Scrutiny Committee. The first reason for this call-in rose from the petition presented by Cabinet by residents of Alliston Way, concerned that the properties would be subject to a blight if the strip of land were excluded from the deed. To attain the option of access to the site listed as suitable for 200 houses in the Schlar, following receipt of the report by the district valuation and a meeting with the portfolio holder, the lead petitioner had accepted the advice of the DVS and so will not be pursuing the reason for the call-in at this meeting. The second reason for the call-in is that the council allowed a ballot to go ahead without having made commitment to abide by the terms of the framework agreement for the QE2 Fields Challenge and subsequently failed to comply with those terms. The report of the independent legal advisor to this committee raises some very important additional points on the issue, and I will ask the committee to recommend the full council to accept this committee's recommendation as of the 6th of March 2012. Thank you.
I will hand over to Mr. Guy.
Chairman, the next bit of the procedure is for you to clarify those issues to be the subject of the call-in process. Obviously, the call-in, the spokesman for the call-in has withdrawn the first element of the call-in, so we won't be debating that tonight. Any issues to do with valuation and blight have gone. So it seems to me that the only topic left is the second one, and the basic point is, the topic is that the council allowed a ballot to go ahead without having made a commitment to abide by the terms of the framework agreement. That question was raised in a legal context, hence the independent legal advice that has been received.
Right, we're now on public participation and visiting councillors. Kathleen Edwards, come forward, please.
Good evening. Thank you for letting me speak about Daniel Road, Whitchurch, part of which is proposed to be dedicated as a Queen Elizabeth II field for Her Majesty's Diamond Jubilee. I am disappointed that the resolution in April 2009 to not promote land in active recreational use for development is now being considered via the back door. When the council allowed land to go forward to the public vote, all expected the result would be honoured. Instead, the council has misrepresented the true situation and used the QE2 field to manipulate in an attempt to compensate for decades of inaction in not securing access to adjoining potential development land at the Knowlings. By excluding land, the committee and the cabinet have indeed had to consider reserving the means of access to the Knowlings land. I would respectfully suggest, therefore, that to rely on Ashford's recent legal advice to you in this regard may not be sensible. Reserving land across Daniel Road is unnecessary. There are more suitable ways, if needed, to access the Knowlings. Residents were hugely proud to have won the field vote, to be hugely disappointed when officers recommended to the 6th of March committee that a potential access strip to the Knowlings be excluded. Excited by the outcome of that committee, residents were again disappointed by officers' report to Cabinet of 20th of March, an inadequate summation of the 6th of the March committee, and with only one decision notice provided, in further debate a foregone conclusion. This committee and this council now have a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to dedicate the whole of its land at Daniel Park as a QE2 field, reinstate faith in true local democracy, and to joyfully celebrate the Queen's Diamond Jubilee. I would urge that you recommend this and ask Cabinet and full Council for this endorsement. Thank you.
Thank you. Could I just clarify one of your points, please? You mentioned Ashford solicitors.
Yep.
Are you suggesting that it's not correct what their report is, or what are
I
you
don't
suggesting?
agree with it. It may be correct, but I don't have to agree with it. Because
Thank you.
I believe that by the portfolio, I've forgotten your name. Sorry, yeah, made a specific point about planning policy and not using the QE2 fields in order to determine planning policy, and yet by reserving a strip to facilitate access for development, it's promotion for that land through the back door, in my opinion.
Thank you for clarifying.
Thank you.
Good evening, members. Really, quite a lot of what I was going to say is gone by the wayside on the basis that the first grant, the call-in, has been withdrawn effectively. I think the key thing here to understand is that the extent of the council's land ownership, it goes beyond Daniel's field, it goes into the Knowlings field as well. Our role as property services is to look after the council's assets, its land assets in the wider sense, and all advice that we give to members is in the light of that. We own the Knowlings. We acquired the Knowlings, or our predecessors entitled the Rural District Council did in 1965. It was acquired as Housing Site 81, so effectively for housing purposes. The only access to that land currently is either via Daniel Park. There's a small access via the Knowlings Road, but the only suitable access at the moment would be through the Daniel Park land. Hence the proposal that we put forward that we should reserve that right. I think it's worth just saying that we put the point to reserve that right for a very good reason. The damage to the retained land would be quite significant if we did not do so in financial terms, and that's something which we have to advise members on as property professionals. It's worth also emphasising that we have no plans whatsoever in respect of the Knowlings. It's been put into the SHLA, the Strategic Housing Land Availability Assessment. We haven't done any work on it. We don't know we haven't done any traffic assessment work, so we don't know the suitability of access is. All we're really doing at the moment is just holding an option for future consideration, but with no plans in detail. In the light of the call-in grounds, obviously we've seen the report from the District Value Services from legal, and certainly from my perspective as the property manager, there's clear backing to the stance that we've taken and the advice we've given to members. If anything, it reinforces the advice we've given, and I would just stand by the advice that we made to Cabinet and ask for that to be continued, please.
Thank you. Councillor Watts.
Yes, thank you. Mike, you weren't at the last meeting of this committee, were you? But because at that meeting I quoted one sentence from a report by County Council Highway Engineers to Karen Brimacombe at the time of the resolution of the SHLA call-in. And what he wrote was that he would have grave concern if the Elliston Way route was to be used as the access to the Knowlings field, or which 10A has been called then. You're aware of that, are you?
I'm aware of the comment. I haven't seen the details. What we've done is taken advice of our own in-house traffic advisors, but very much on the basis of a high-level view. And a high-level view was to retain that strip of some 20 metres, not for a 20-metre wide road, but just because that will be the sort of width for a road, along with landscaping and everything that goes with it. So as I say, the traffic assessment work has to be done in detail to do with detailed proposals, genuine ones, we haven't done the work.
Can I ask Mr. Guy to come in now, please?
Mr. Chairman, I think it's important that the meeting here tonight is to consider and ask questions on the called-in point. It's not an opportunity to reopen the whole thing. And of course, the called-in point that we focused down on is simply that the council allowed a ballot to go ahead without having made a commitment to abide by the terms of the framework agreement, and in particular the legal aspects of that. So the committee is focusing down on a very narrow point, and all questions and statements should be focused on that.
Well, yes, Chairman, but as Mike said, it was the only suitable access. It seemed reasonable to quote what I gave the previous committee saying it wasn't suitable. But I have got a question that leads to the main point of this meeting. And can you say, when was an officer decision first made to recommend that this strip should be retained?
Is that a question for this call then, Chris?
Chairman, I think if Councillor Watts could just explain how the question fits in with the call-in criteria.
The call-in criterion is that the council let the ballots go ahead without having entered into the commitment on which the ballot is predicated. And the reason we're interested in that issue at all is because the council is now saying that the land as defined at the time of the ballot isn't what's going to be dedicated. Now, I don't know, and I've been refused the information under freedom of information, and I shall find other channels to raise it. I don't know when the suggestion that the council wasn't going to do what the ballot was predicated on was taken. If it was taken before the ballot, then we have a different question in front of us today to if it was taken after the ballot.
Well, from our perspective, I can only talk about property services, to be honest. It came to us in December to deal with our legal colleagues in terms of the dedication of that land. It's something when we looked at it, we realised that we had retained land which would be seriously impacted if we didn't do something about it, and hence our recommendation.
If you have a ballot which says we would dedicate this piece of land, and the result of the ballot is that the cabinet says we won't dedicate all of that land because we're going to keep a strip of it for access, then the issue is access. The issue is not a particular line in the sand. The issue is access. And I wanted to ask the cabinet member about access. Now, if you're saying I could only talk about one particular form of access, then I think tonight's a nonsense. So my question to the cabinet member is, if there is, are you aware of, or have you considered, if there is any other potential access? Because if there is other potential access onto the retained land, then the need to only have access via Daniel Park is iffy. It's not on solid foundation. So the issue is access, and I believe I'm entitled, as a member of this committee, to ask the cabinet member that question. Thank you.
Councillor Joe, I will ask you to answer, even though I consider this outside the remit.
Chairman, I'm very happy to answer this question. I answer it in two parts. The first part would be that at present there is, and as officer has said, there is no other suitable access. I would refer the committee to both page 28 of 32, which is a map which shows that off the Knowlings there is an access that is marked there, access for emergency only. That's not a suitable access if the Knowlings was ever to be developed. Therefore, that is why it is proposed that the strip currently identified is retained. The second part of my answer, if I may, Chairman, would be that on page 21 of 52, and indeed 20 of 52, under point 7.3, There are a number of different paragraphs there identifying potential access routes. It deals with the potential access via Daniel Park. It also deals with the potential access that's been suggested by others from Mitchell-Dever Road, and actually says that actually we do not have access from there at this present time. It would require negotiations, and that is not something that we own as yet, and therefore it would be inappropriate to rely on it.
Thank you for that.
Basically, it's been said on many occasions now, the problem is with the ballot, that the ballot was quite clear and it didn't have attachments to say that you couldn't do this or this piece of land would be taken out in the ballot. And so what we're asking is that the portfolio holder reconsider his decision and revert to the decision that was made in the committee on March the 6th, 2012, with it taking into account those recommendations, is our point one. And secondly, that this should be referred to the full council as well for debate, again taking into account those decisions that were made on the 6th of March 2012, which means that the piece of land that is now being moved, is being earmarked for access, is not so.
We've not relied on officer advice, although the advice that would come back independently is exactly what officers had said. And the external advice is clear on both counts that A, there wasn't blight, and that the council is not legally fettered in this matter. Fields-In-Trust, as you've seen from the answers that they have provided this evening, have indicated willingness to accept the major part of Daniel Park, with the council retaining this possible access strip. And I use the word possible because that is simply the case. The investigative work has yet to be done, and the retention of this strip is solely to keep the council's options open for future consideration in the manner of good asset management. And certainly, as I said, I want to see people across this borough using neighbourhood planning as the way to determine what they want to see their place, what they want their place to look like in the years ahead. And it would be inappropriate for us, indeed, on that account, to curtail the freedom of the people of Whitchurch to decide what they want to do in the years ahead. Aside from that, it's worth noting that both Fields-In-Trust and I and other people at the council are anxious to sign and complete the deed of dedication to ensure the long-term protection of Daniel Park as a playing field. To my mind, it is a great shame that we have not been able to dedicate the vast majority of this land for the QE2 challenge sooner. This call-in has stopped it from being dedicated to date. I very much hope that tonight we can agree a way forward that ensures we can move to dedication as soon as possible. And whether or not land for a possible access strip is excluded from the deed, it will continue to be used as open space as part of Daniel Park until such time as the council bring forward, if ever, any detailed proposals for the Knowlings field. We will consider all access options at that time, as Councillor Keating rightly questioned, and for that reason I really would ask members to accept the decision that was made at Cabinet, having listened to the views of the committee, of residents and of officers, and confirmed tonight by the third-party advice that we've had. I request that members do use your power under Section 9 to support the called-in decision and allow the called-in decision to stand, allowing the council to dedicate this land as quickly as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Watts.
What I've prepared is questions for the legal advisor, so please bear with me as I turn that into my comments. The first clause that I want to deal with is, in my view, the framework deed is not a document the council could lawfully have entered into at any time in the process. I was going to ask the legal advisor if there was any evidence that the council's officers had given that advice, but in the absence of that, I have, through freedom of information, got a copy of an email from a legal officer which says, I have reviewed the framework document and there are some stringent conditions attached. The council cannot dispose of the land without consent from the MPFA and providing an equivalent area. The council cannot grant a lease on the land unless it secured continued recreational use. The council cannot erect any building or temporary structure on the land without consent from the NPFA unless linked to continued recreational use. Maintenance obligations. There are two options of a deed when the site has been decided upon, a charitable or non-charitable deed. I would recommend a non-charitable deed as there is no extra benefit to the council in it being a charitable trust and it may be more work. I've corrected a couple of minor typos on page 3. So unless there's another document that's been withheld from me, the council officers did not advise that the framework deed's not a document the council could lawfully have entered into.
Could I ask Mr. Guy to come back here, because I don't believe that's what it says.
Chairman, I have a problem here because I hear what Councillor Watts says, but of course members have asked for independent legal advice. We've now received independent legal advice, and then to say the independent legal advice might be wrong because of some internal legal advice seems to negate the whole point of asking for external independent legal advice.
On the contrary, I'm not saying the independent legal advice is wrong. What I'm saying is that in accepting this, I'm drawing attention to the fact that the internal advice wasn't given.
Chairman, the email that Councillor Watts is referring to was a quick review. It makes it clear it was a quick review. It indicated all the stringent conditions attached and then asked if they would need any further information. It was just a very quick glance to inform somebody what initial feelings were, and that was as far as it went. I'm not aware that that legal ever got any further instructions on that.
Can I just say that I'm not attempting to criticise the legal officers. What I'm stating is what the evidence is, and the evidence from our independent advisor is that it's not a document the council could lawfully have entered into. You must let me build my argument through. I'm not actually here to criticise anyone at all, although there is one body that might get some criticism later on. I just want to work my way through this legal advice and draw some conclusions from it. Clause 2. The manner in which the potential involvement of the council in the QE2 FC progressed does not follow the format of the framework deed, in that the council was clearly doing things in reverse. This is our independent advisor telling us the council was doing things in reverse in relation to the framework deed on which the ballot was predicated. On that, I mean, I would like to call in evidence Basingstoke and Deane today. I'm afraid I've only got one copy here, which, under the heading Playing Field by Royal Appointment, said that the playing field selected, this gives communities an opportunity to vote for an outdoor space in their area to be permanently protected as a tribute to the Diamond Jubilee. And it then says, for further information, please visit www.QE2fields.com. And that web reference, if you allow me to hunt through for it, what the item called up by Basingstoke and Deane today, which went to every resident of Basingstoke and Deane, says is, how does the voting process work? Local authorities are invited to submit a number of possible sites that they would be happy to permanently protect under the terms of the challenge. The suitability of these sites is verified by FIT, and the framework deed is then signed by the local authority. The framework deed commits the local authority to execute the deed of dedication on an agreed number of sites that will be selected through the public vote. So we have the council telling the public that this is what's going to happen and referring them to this for detail, saying that the council would commit itself to a framework deed, and we have the independent legal advice telling us the council was clearly doing things in reverse, which people around here are very sensitive about the words I use, so I won't I won't tell you which word to use for a statutory authority that tells the public it's doing one thing and is in fact doing them in reverse. So let's move on to another quote further in...
Councillor Watts, can we please clarify that? Because to me, I can't see any problem in it. They did go out to vote, there was a vote, and they looked at it. And then when they looked at it, we are where we are, and hopefully we can sign something. But this call-in is stopping that signing procedure. So
the website called up by Basingstoke and Deane today says that it would be done in accordance with the framework deed, and that the council would then abide by that and dedicate the fields. The legal advisor is telling us that wasn't what the council was doing, it was doing it in reverse. If you're going to interrupt me clause by clause... Then
well, what I don't want is a whole load of stuff to go, because we're going to forget it, because we're here for a specific reason. Can I let...
Chairman, I think as the legal advisor to the committee, given that we don't have the external legal advisor because that was agreed, I think I do need to just comment as we go through. All I would say here is that what Ashfords are addressing is the terms of the call-in. In other words, could one construe by the actions of the council that we were acting as if the framework agreement was in place? And what Ashfords are clearly saying is that no, the council was not acting in a way that could reasonably be construed as assuming that the framework agreement was in place. And that's as far as the advice goes.
I'm sorry, it's very pertinent to the ground for call-in what the public were told. And Basingstoke and Deane today, supported by the website it calls up, says clearly the council was saying we were working to this framework deed, and it then explains in one or two sentences what that means. So that's very, very pertinent to the ground for the call-in. What are we telling the public is very important. Now, what you're saying is that by telling us the council was clearly doing things in reverse, then there was never any hope, never any intention that what was declared in Basingstoke and Deane and today was going to happen. And I must say I'm rather unhappy with that. But I would like to move on, if I may. The report says the exchanges between the council officers and FiT are entirely contrary to any reasonable belief that either party thought at any time that it was proceeding under the framework deed. And yet, told the public we were going to, and went through a ballot, and both the council and Fields-in-Trust allowed the ballot to go ahead when the council was acting in a reverse way. Now, I think that's a terrible indictment of Fields-in-Trust. And we have this statement, which just on the table when we arrived in, Fields-in-Trust say that the area was quoted with no plan or detailed description. That is just not true. Now, I've got at home the Freedom of Information request showing the document that was sent to Fields-in-Trust with the plan, and which was the very plan I tabled at the last meeting of this committee. So these, I think, are grounds for the disagreement between this committee's last meeting and the Cabinet to be referred to full council. Also, actually in clause 2 it says it's clear the council intended to consult and then decide whether to offer any particular site, and that is not at all what the council told the public it was doing. And frankly, that ballot should not have gone ahead if the council was not doing what it was telling the public it was doing, and what Fields-in-Trust were telling the public they were doing. Fundamental elements of the framework deed were not agreed, for example, the number of sites, if any, to be selected. And there was an email, which was timed at, redacted, so I don't know who it's from or to, 15:31 on the 13th of July 2011. July, and we had the ballot in October. The effect of the framework deed is to effect an agreement by the council to sign the deed of dedication for whichever site is selected by the vote. And the use of the singular there is clear indication that Basingstoke and Deane were only going to select one site, whereas some other councils have in fact selected all of the sites that were nominated. So my case is that this legal advice shows that the council has thoroughly misbehaved in relation to what it was saying to the public. It committed itself in writing to the public to working to the framework agreement, but the lawyers are telling us that they never had the slightest intention of doing that, and on those grounds I propose that the full council be advised to adopt the previous recommendation of this committee.
Thank you. I did allow you 2 lots of 4 minutes there, since you are the ward councillor for the area. Councillor Mrs Reid.
Yes, Chair, just on a point of order. Councillor Watts is suggesting the council misbehaved on the basis of something that's published on an external website. I don't see how the council can be held responsible for something which is on an external website rather than something the council is itself responsible for singly.
Not at all, not at all. It's on the basis of the independent legal advice. The council was clearly doing things in reverse.
We are still in debate for this committee. Is there any Councillor Keating?
If the council got it wrong, I believe it wasn't intentional or malicious or deliberate in any shape or form. I do believe that the people of Whitchurch voted on the basis that they were led to believe, correctly at the time I believe, that it was the whole of Daniel Park. If the people of Whitchurch were asked to vote today, it's no protection for the whole of Daniel Park, or you can have the protection in perpetuity of 90% of Daniel Park, as long as the council has the right to use access should it become necessary. I believe the people of Whitchurch would be sensible enough to vote for the proposed protection for 90%. As councillors, we have a duty not just to Whitchurch and the people of Whitchurch. We have a duty to protect and preserve the interest of the council as a whole, and that includes the ability to develop land that we own and, if necessary, have access to it. I have changed my mind on this particular subject. Firstly, because I accept that the people of Whitchurch went to a ballot in the clear understanding that it was the whole of Daniel Park they were talking about. I think if we went to them individually or collectively today, in a ballot, and said to them, do we go ahead now and protect your Daniel Park, but we have to have a strip to retain access rights, I think they would say better 90% than none. So I think it's probably nitpicking in a genuine sense. I don't mean it's malicious in any shape or form, but I think it's nitpicking to now say, well, we got the procedure wrong, we had the right intention, it was a good decision, but we got the procedure wrong, because if we'd had the ballot after we had put the access strip in, I'm sure the people at Whitchurch would have said, yeah, we'll have that bit of protection. So on that basis, Chair, I would stop. Thank you.
Councillor Putty, did you want to say something?
Oh, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, what I really want to say is that we are delaying this, and by delaying this, we are actually running out of time. And I would really, I've heard the remarks from our portfolio holder, Councillor Jayawardena, and I believe that he has made the right way to approach this, and we should really go ahead and approve this so that we can actually dedicate, the deed of dedication can be a reality. And I would really urge members to really go ahead with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor West.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Councillor Watts stated that this borough never had any intention in going ahead with the dedication of Daniel's Field. That's what you said. That is exactly what you said.
What I said is that the independent legal advisor says it never had any intention of working to the framework agreement.
By implication, and it'll be witnessed on this webcast, you implied that the borough never had any intention of going ahead with it anyway. So do you...
Councillor West,
yes.
to speed procedures, could you reduce your severity of what you're trying to say?
In which case then, does Councillor Watts wish to disassociate himself from that comment?
I dissociate myself from what Councillor West says, but I will repeat for a second time that I was quoting the independent legal advisor who was saying that I'll turn it up and read it again if you like. I was sort of packing up, ready to go, really. That it's clear that the council never intended to be working to the framework agreement. Now I know Mr. Guy can use that against me because the precise definition of this grounds for call-in, but I certainly didn't say that. It is clear, so the council was clearly doing things in reverse. First thing, it is clear the council intended to consult and then decide whether to offer any particular site. That's the independent legal advisor saying that.
Yeah, that's actually in our minutes. Could I move on to Councillor Round?
Yes, you can.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm disappointed that we've created all of these delays in getting this job done. The paper here from Fields-In-Trust clearly says that a normal process goes along the route and that at some point there could be some changes to shape, size, or layout, etc. And that is part of a process. Trying to dovetail in everything to make it work in a particular order can't always happen. Our Cabinet made the correct decision for the benefit of the whole borough. I supported the original officer report, I supported the Cabinet decision. And now further work by officers, district valuers, etc., supports our original decision. We should now get on and get the job done.
Thank you, councillors.
Chairman, reference was made by Councillor Watts to full council. Clearly the normal route on an executive matter like this would be to amend or reject the call-in decision and ask Cabinet to rethink it. But clearly it's a matter for councillors, Chairman.
My Vice Chairman wants to speak.
Chair, I'd like to move Resolution 9, little 1, to support the called-in decision, and the called-in decision therefore stands.
Councillor Round.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I'm happy to support Vice Chair's recommendation. Thank you.
Councillors, we have a proposal and seconder for 9.1. All those in favour of 9.1, please show.
7, Chairman.
Sorry, all those against? 3.
Lost, Chairman.
So, please correct me if I'm wrong, but that is now the end of it then. We've had a motion passed and that's it.
That's correct. It's the end of the meeting, Chair.
The meeting's finished. Thank you very much for turning up. Everybody, thanks for turning up. I do accept this is, it's been a long time.